Britannia, or Britain, formed the northwestern frontier of the Roman Empire. The Romans never conquered Ireland, so most of the frontier followed the coastline. In the north of Britain, however, it crossed the land and was defended by a wall. The Emperor Hadrian gave his name to the Great Northern Wall, which was begun in AD 122. It ran for 117 kilometres from the Solway Firth to the River Tyne. Its aim was to keep out the tribes on the northern side and to prevent them from making alliances with tribes on the southern side, and the wall made it easier to move troops and supplies. Hadrian's wall was built of stone, about 4 metres high by 3 metres wide. It was defended by ditches, and at every Roman mile, 1,500 metres, there was a mini-fort with a tower to guard crossing points. There was a string of larger forts along the wall, and the large Vindolanda base was built on an east-west road to the south of the wall. We're in the south gatehouse at Housesteads Roman fort on Hadrian's Wall, built 1900 years ago, and it's pretty amazing. When I saw the stones from a distance, I was quite surprised by how evenly shaped they were, as opposed to when you see dry stone walls. They're all different shapes which are very carefully placed together, but here it's as if they've been dressed to be shaped into pretty even rectangular shapes. We're looking up, seeing the Roman remains, and beyond them the very brightly coloured new structure by Morag Myerscough of what the gatehouse would have been like back then, and it is the exact size of the gatehouse as it was built. Housesteads was an auxiliary fort on Hadrian's Wall and built around AD 124, soon after the construction of the wall began in 122. It was repaired and rebuilt a number of times. Housesteads is rectangular in shape, with the corners rounded like a playing card, the typical Roman fort plan. It covers just over 5 acres. In the 2nd century AD, Housesteads was garrisoned by an auxiliary cohort and a detachment of legionnaires. It was garrisoned in the 3rd and 4th centuries by the first cohort of Tungrians from Belgium. This large ruined building is the Praetorium, the largest building in the fort, and it was for the commanding officer, or the prefect as he was known, for him and his family and servants. And the design was based on a Mediterranean design which had a central courtyard. In the Mediterranean, that was providing shade in the hot weather. In Northumberland, it was providing shelter from the cold, and they had underfloor heating in their main rooms too. Here is the stable. Let's see what's up here. This is the heart of the fort, the headquarters building, Principia, where the administrative, ceremonial and symbolic heart of the fort was, where regimental organisation and the imperial state religion were focused. The building was in the centre of the fort, at the junction of 2 main streets and facing its main east gate, because the fort was built either facing the sunrise or the enemy, and here it was built facing sunrise. In the Roman army, a cohort was what was called a group of 800 men, and they were brought from all over the Roman Empire because they didn't want to employ local people because they might have encouraged the local people to rise up in rebellion. The future belongs to what was as much as what is. That's the title the artist Morag Myerscough gave to her temporary installation, which stands on the exact spot that the North Gatehouse once stood. It was a portal between the Roman Empire and the communities beyond the wall. Through imposing structures, vivid colours and meaningful symbols, the empire and its people proclaimed their power and identity. Morag Myerscough, the poet Ellen Moran and the local community creatively reimagined the North Gatehouse and explored the continuing importance of Hadrian's Wall to their lives. The community has made its mark through colour, patterns, words and symbols, just as those at Housesteads did 1900 years ago. The imposing size and form of this installation are close to those of the original gatehouse, so we were able to climb the platform to a view of the landscape that hasn't been seen since the Roman garrison last kept watch here 1600 years ago. We've come inside the structure now and the wind is whistling around, but it's all pretty firm and it's very impressive actually. Very impressive, and this is what the size that it would have been. The Roman soldiers would have been up here looking out in all weathers. We can see how each individual contribution is very securely and simply done, attached to these scaffolding, and each one has been thought about and worked with and painted, and then at the end of October, it said in brackets, weather permitting, this is going to be taken down because the scaffolding will be used again, and then I don't know what will be happening to all the art contributions, but it's not meant to be a permanent piece, but it's certainly very, very good, despite thinking at first that it looked rather inappropriate. We're now standing by the walls of the original North Gate, and here they are. And here is a very impressive list of everybody that's been involved in one way or another with this creation. These are the granaries. There were so many soldiers involved in the maintaining of the wall that obviously they would need food, and this was where the grain was stored, and the pillars would have had a wooden floor on the top to help keep the food free from vermin. We've come a second time to Housesteads, this time in bright sunshine, and Morag Myerscough's creation really stands out. We're looking at a communal latrine because with 800 men living, up to 800 men living here, good hygiene was essential. And this is a very good example of how it worked, because there would have been wooden benches over the deep sewer with holes to form multiple toilet seats. And the sewer was flushed by rainwater and sometimes by the bath water, and they collected the rainwater from the roofs of nearby buildings, and there was a channel then along which water flowed for washing. We don't know what soldiers used for toilet paper, but sponges were available in the Mediterranean, and at Housesteads it may have been moss, bracken or rags on a stick. This is a watchtower, obviously keeping watch over the countryside around here, and very conveniently sited next to the loos. Here are some of my favourite flowers, the little harebells, which grow in the most unfavourable looking places. This is a late watchtower because not all the buildings were done at the same time. So perhaps another one had gone into disrepair. And here's another watchtower. We're in another watchtower, we presume, this time looking eastwards to a good section of the wall. Most of the space within the fort was occupied by barracks where the soldiers and their officers lived. And here are the wall foundations of one of them, because each one accommodated a sentry, which was 80 men in 10 compartments. I thought a sentry was 100. And a larger compartment for the centurion in charge. The group of 8 men lived in a very small space, made worse by being divided into 2 smaller rooms. The front room was for the weapons and their kit, and the rear room for sleeping. Then there was a pitched roof over the front, supported on stone columns, which we can see, to provide a dry covered area for various duties and for relaxing when off duty. These ruins are part of several bakehouses which were used by the soldiers, and the ovens were close to the soldiers' barracks but far enough away not to be a fire hazard, and the soldiers themselves baked their own bread, and they were well fed with a varied diet. We've come out of Housesteads fort and now we're walking westwards along the wall, the only part of the wall that you were supposed to walk on. It's very pleasant walking along here with the sound of the wind in the trees, and they're sheltering us from the warm sun today. But I don't think in Roman, well, obviously these trees wouldn't have been there, but we don't know that there would have been trees here at the Roman time. And now we have to leave the wall because, in the interest of conservation, as this notice says, they want to keep the wall standing a bit longer. This is Mile Castle 37, the largest and best preserved of the Mile castles. These stones look precarious now, but I guess they're the remaining part of the arch. I guess the soldiers would have been more comfortable here with more space, and so that they could have the separate rooms. We're looking across to Cuddy's Crag, and the air up here is supposed to be very pure and clean because of the lichens that are formed. And Housesteads Fort is between the 2 clumps of trees. We can see where the Roman wall finishes at the top of Cuddy's Crag. There's still a wall carrying along the line of it, but that is obviously a much later wall. We're walking back to Housesteads along the military way below Cuddy's Crag, and the wall is up to our left, up and down to our left.